Hello, everyone. Meghan Markle's latest attempt to secure legal protection for investigative privilege seems like a weak effort to dodge responsibility for her questionable connections, especially with Sean Diddy Combs. This move highlights her boldness and sense of entitlement as she works to salvage her reputation, all while holding onto her inflated self-image. Instead of facing the consequences of her actions, she hides behind legal tactics, hoping to spin a story where she's seen as the victim. It's almost amusing how she thinks legal terms can sway public opinion. Here's someone who has been given countless opportunities, yet she finds herself caught up in scandals just like many in Hollywood. Her association with someone like Diddy, whose career has been filled with controversy, only shows how she struggles to separate herself from the very chaos she claims to avoid. This behavior is far from what you'd expect from someone who claims to be reformed. Instead, it's typical of someone who thrives on chaos. Meghan's actions speak volumes about her character or lack thereof. Rather than taking responsibility for the problem she's created in her life, she plays the victim, trying to shift focus away from her questionable choices. Her constant blame shifting shows deep insecurity, wrapped in a false sense of importance. The irony is hard to miss. She married into royalty but chooses to associate with people surrounded by scandals while pretending to uphold a polished image in her pursuit of IPP status. Meghan represents hypocrisy at its peak. She tries to present herself as a model of integrity, but her actions tell a different story. This is someone who seems to believe she's above the law, thinking she can avoid the consequences of her choices just by hiding behind legal protections. It's incredibly self-centered and short-sighted. Rather than owning up to her actions, Meghan tries to hide them under layers of legal loopholes, showing a clear lack of honesty and authenticity. Every time she attempts to shift the narrative, she unintentionally highlights how out of touch she is with reality. Her constant claims of victimhood are wearing thin with the public, who are growing more frustrated with her behavior. The more she tries to avoid accountability, the more she reveals her true self, a pampered celebrity who refuses to face the consequences of her choices. It's no surprise that many see her as the embodiment of privilege, someone who thinks she can bend the rules and ignore the responsibilities that come with her status. What's especially revealing is her inability to see how her decisions impact her image. Instead of taking a moment to reflect on her life, she keeps following paths that only tie her more closely to scandal. The irony of someone who claims to want privacy while constantly stirring up scandal is not lost on the public. Meghan Markle's repeated insistence on protecting her children seems empty when her actions continually put them in the spotlight. Her frantic push for investigative privilege protection shows a woman trapped by her own reckless choices, struggling to regain control of a narrative that's slipping away. Instead of becoming a respected figure, she's turning into a symbol of entitlement and delusion. Each misguided legal move only deepens her role as a subject of ridicule, reflecting the worst aspects of a celebrity culture addicted to drama and scandal. Sources suggest Meghan's legal team is worried that any testimony or evidence from Diddy could unravel the image she's carefully crafted, exposing troubling details from her past. This growing concern highlights not just a fear of public backlash, but a recognition of how fragile her reputation truly is. Meghan Markle's life has been a constant exercise in damage control. Yet here she is, standing on the brink of another looming scandal, desperately trying to avoid the inevitable consequences. The media frenzy around this case has turned into a spectacle, and her growing anxieties only add fuel to the fire. The true irony lies in her previous efforts to control the narrative. Her journey from a briefcase girl on a game show to the Duchess of Sussex was marked by calculated decisions. But as controversy builds, it's becoming clear that her carefully constructed image was always a fragile facade, now dangerously close to collapsing. What stands out most in this latest chapter is the sheer absurdity of her situation. Once celebrated as a symbol of modernity and empowerment, she now finds herself reduced to playing legal games, scrambling to avoid a downfall that's becoming harder to escape. This is Diddy's testimony. The irony is undeniable. Someone who once portrayed herself as a voice for change is now caught up in Hollywood's darkest dealings. Rather than standing strong, Meghan seems like a puppet pulled by the strings of her own choices and associations. As the allegations against Diddy unfold, the stakes for her grow more serious. Meghan's past decisions, particularly her ill-chosen connections, are now coming back to haunt her in spectacular fashion. This is no longer just about protecting her image, it's about a narrative she desperately hoped would stay hidden. Her attempts to distance herself from this chaos will likely fall flat, exposing just how unprepared she is for life under the public eye. Meghan's strategy of using legal protections as a shield against possible revelations highlights her sense of entitlement. This is a classic case of celebrity complex where fame blurs the lines of responsibility and accountability. Instead of taking ownership of her past and facing the consequences, she hides behind legal maneuvers to cover up the truth. This mindset reveals not only a lack of integrity but also deep insecurity and an unwillingness to confront the reality of her choices. The public is growing tired of her endless efforts to reshape her narrative. The compassionate humanitarian image crumbles with each new legal battle, each move more desperate than the last. It's almost laughable how Meghan continues to believe that she can charm her way out of scrutiny with empty words and legal defenses. The authenticity she once claimed to represent now feels hollow, as her actions show a greater focus on self-preservation than on genuinely addressing her shortcomings. What's truly fascinating is how her current situation starkly contrasts with the values she once claimed to stand for. She spoke of empowerment and breaking boundaries, yet now she's grasping at straws, terrified of facing the truth about her connections. This paints a rather unflattering picture of someone who isn't just playing the victim card, she's playing it to the fullest. The hypocrisy is glaring. Meghan sought the privilege and platform that comes with royal life, yet she's terrified of the scrutiny that accompanies it. Her current legal troubles reflect her unwillingness to confront the consequences of her past. Her reliance on legal protection isn't just a sign of guilt, it's a telling statement about her character or lack thereof. As she attempts to twist the narrative, the truth remains clear and against her. The more she tries to avoid accountability, the deeper she sinks into a reputation that resembles more of a soap opera than a genuine life story. Her attempts to shield herself from public scrutiny only highlight her shortcomings, solidifying her role as a controversial figure increasingly disconnected from reality. As she navigates this latest mess, the world watches, both entertained and dismayed, as she dances around the truth she can no longer escape. If there's one lesson to be learned from Meghan's chaotic journey, it's that the truth always finds a way to come out, no matter how hard one tries to hide it. The irony here is almost too good to be true. In her quest for privacy, she's become the subject of endless fascination, a cautionary tale of what happens when image overtakes authenticity. Meghan, who has faced intense public scrutiny since marrying Prince Harry, has built a reputation for advocating on issues like mental health and gender equality. However, the possibility of being dragged into a criminal case involving a high-profile figure like Diddy puts her public persona and charitable efforts at serious risk. It raises the question, how does she reconcile her claims of championing the underprivileged with the reality of her current situation? Is she truly the noble humanitarian she claims to be, or are these causes merely a cover for her increasingly unstable position? The glaring contrast between Meghan Markle's self-proclaimed values and her actions couldn't be more evident. While she has positioned herself as a progressive voice, her life appears more focused on dodging accountability than fostering meaningful change. Her attempts to project sophistication and empathy fall flat when compared to the chaotic fallout of her past associations. The charitable causes she promotes often seem more like publicity stunts than genuine efforts for change. As her legal troubles pile up, it raises the question, are her advocacy efforts sincere or just a well-crafted strategy to stay relevant in a world that's beginning to see through her carefully constructed image? What's even more telling is how quickly Meghan plays the victim whenever she faces adversity. This not only diminishes the struggles of those she claims to support, but it also makes her appear unwilling to take responsibility for her actions. Instead of facing the truth, she seems to thrive on drama, casting herself as a martyr in her own self-made narrative. This never-ending cycle of evasion is exhausting and transparent, leaving many to roll their eyes at her repeated attempts to gain sympathy. Her hypocrisy is underscored by her history of aligning with individuals whose actions go against the very values she claims to stand for. By trying to protect her image through legal tactics, Meghan shows a fundamental misunderstanding of the principle she supposedly advocates for. If she were truly committed to causes like mental health, she would confront her challenges directly rather than hide behind legal shields. Instead, she chooses to deflect, hoping to distract from her mistakes while clinging to her public persona as a champion of change. Additionally, her connection to Diddy, a figure surrounded by controversy, casts a long shadow over her aspirations and further undermines her credibility. Meghan Markle's past choices are now under scrutiny, especially as her association with scandal-ridden individuals raises concerns. It's becoming harder to believe her narrative when the company she keeps suggests she's willing to compromise her integrity for personal gain. Her efforts to distance herself from Diddy's controversies only highlight her desperation, making it clear that she's willing to sacrifice her so-called values to protect herself. The fallout from her actions goes beyond personal embarrassment. It threatens to undermine the very social causes she claims to support. As she fights to maintain her public image, it's crucial to remember that true advocates face their challenges head-on without relying on a safety net. Meghan's dependence on legal strategies to avoid accountability doesn't just harm her credibility, it diminishes the causes she claims to stand for. In a world where authenticity is increasingly important, Meghan's attempts to portray herself as a compassionate leader feel empty. Her actions suggest self-preservation over genuine commitment, leaving her image of empathy and leadership in question. The stark contrast between Meghan Markle's words and actions is becoming impossible to overlook, especially as she gets tangled in her own legal troubles. The facade of her public persona is quickly unraveling, revealing someone more focused on maintaining appearances than driving real change. As her legal battles unfold, it becomes increasingly clear that her story is full of contradictions. The harder she tries to distance herself from the consequences of her choices, the more her credibility crumbles. The public, once captivated by her fairy tale, is now left feeling betrayed. What was once seen as a modern royal love story has descended into a spectacle of scandal and hypocrisy. By seeking investigative privilege protection IP status, Meghan is attempting to control what information is revealed during the legal process. Legal experts suggest this move is driven by her desire to protect her privacy and shield herself from potential fallout tied to the ongoing investigation. However, this frantic attempt to regain control reveals a lot about Meghan Markle's character and motivations. Rather than taking responsibility for her past actions, she seems to be using her legal knowledge to shield herself from scrutiny while portraying herself as a misunderstood victim of circumstance. The irony is striking. A woman who has branded herself as a champion of truth and transparency is now trying to hide her own misdeeds behind a legal barrier. This raises questions about her authenticity. If Meghan truly believed in the causes she advocates so passionately, wouldn't she confront these challenges directly? Instead, she chooses a strategy that reflects a strong desire for self-preservation, suggesting a deep-seated fear of being exposed. The reality is that in managing her public image, she appears more focused on crafting a narrative that suits her than on being honest about her past. As the investigation continues, it becomes increasingly clear that Meghan's need for control is a thinly veiled attempt to divert attention from the potential fallout of her associations. Those who once admired Meghan Markle for her supposed dedication to social justice are now shaking their heads in disbelief. The public's perception of her is changing, and for good reason. She has squandered the goodwill of the very people she claims to support. Her recent actions only widen the gap between her words and reality. In her quest for protection, Meghan seems unaware that her behavior only intensifies the scrutiny around her. The more she tries to control the narrative, the clearer it becomes that she has something to hide. Her constant attempts to cast herself as a victim are not only obvious but also painfully ironic. Given her past actions, the image of the benevolent advocate is starting to crumble, revealing someone ready to play the victim card at the first sign of trouble. This behavior raises an important question: does Meghan truly believe in the causes she champions, or is she simply using them as a convenient distraction from her growing legal troubles? It's hard to take Meghan Markle seriously as a spokesperson for change when her actions tell a different story. The hypocrisy is striking, and the public is becoming increasingly aware of it. Instead of standing firm in her beliefs, Markle appears to be floundering, desperately trying to salvage her public image. Many see this as insincere and opportunistic as her legal troubles continue to unfold. Her attempts to manipulate the narrative only strengthen her reputation as a master of spin rather than a genuine advocate. She is not the victim she wants to portray. She is a woman caught up in a scandal of her own making, trying to rewrite her story. This behavior does not reflect someone who is truly dedicated to their causes. Instead, it shows someone whose top priority is self-preservation. Furthermore, the impact of her legal issues goes beyond her personal life. Markle's actions could also affect the very causes she claims to champion. Meghan Markle's advocacy for mental health and gender equality risks being overshadowed by her controversial associations, particularly with figures like Diddy, which effectively undermine her credibility. If she genuinely cared about these issues, she would recognize that her continued ties to problematic individuals compromise the integrity of her advocacy. Instead, she seems to prioritize her own comfort over the values she claims to uphold. The narrative surrounding Markle is increasingly one of contradictions and disillusionment. She has built her brand on empathy and social justice, yet her actions consistently tell a different story. Her legal maneuvers, victim mentality, and refusal to accept responsibility highlight the growing divide between her public image and the reality of her choices. As the public observes this unfolding drama, it becomes painfully clear that Meghan's attempts to shape her narrative go beyond mere self-defense. They reflect a larger pattern of behavior. Meghan Markle is caught in a cycle of evasion and denial, desperately holding onto an image that is crumbling before her eyes. With each passing day, her credibility continues to decline, and the very causes she claims to support risk being tarnished by her questionable choices. In a world that is increasingly wary of hypocrisy, her ongoing attempts to present herself as a champion for change are falling flat. What was once a narrative embraced by many is now met with skepticism, and it's hard to blame those who are starting to see through her elaborate facade. The more she tries to control the narrative, the more her true self is revealed, someone who is as much a part of the problem as she claims to be fighting against. Ultimately, Meghan's quest for privacy and control seems less about protecting herself and more about maintaining the illusion of her carefully crafted image. As she navigates this turbulent chapter, the public remains watchful, ready to point out the contradictions that define her story. Mark's story is a clear reminder of how easily people can lose their way when chasing fame, leaving behind a legacy that may not reflect their true values. Meghan Markle's ongoing legal battles feel ironic. She presents herself as a voice of modern values and empowerment, yet now finds herself caught in a web of contradictions that weaken her public image. The gap between her spoken ideals and her actions shows a revealing truth about her character. Instead of addressing the consequences of her past choices, she seems more focused on protecting herself, using legal strategies to reshape how the public views her. This raises questions about her authenticity and accountability. In the world of celebrity culture, her attempts to avoid criticism only make people question her motives more. The image of a caring advocate becomes harder to believe when it's clouded by legal troubles and questionable decisions as she tries to keep control over her story. It's hard not to feel a mix of disbelief and disappointment at the lengths she's going to avoid facing the consequences. Her actions show someone out of touch with both reality and the values she claims to stand for. In the end, Meghan Markle's experience is a warning about the dangers of fame and entitlement. The more she tries to rewrite her story, the more her true self comes to light, a person caught up in the drama she claims to reject, unable to take real responsibility, which true leadership requires. Thank you for watching today's video. If you enjoyed this content and want to learn more, stay tuned for upcoming discussions. Analysis of entertainment figures. Don't forget to hit like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss out on future exciting videos. Let's build a community where we can share opinions and discuss together. See you in the next video.